The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I was already awake, nursing my second cup of coffee and watching the snow fall outside my kitchen window in Syracuse. The flakes were small and dense, the kind that accumulates fast. By noon, upstate New York would be buried under 6 inches. The number on my phone showed my brother's name, Victor. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks, not since our last tense visit to Mom's care facility in Liverpool. Martin. His voice had that false solemnity that immediately put me on edge. Professional, practiced, the tone he probably used when delivering bad news to clients about denied claims. I have some difficult news. I set down my coffee mug. Mom passed away last night, peacefully, in her sleep. My hands went cold. The snow outside suddenly looked sharper, colder. What? When? I was planning to visit her today. The funeral is Friday. He continued, cutting me off. His tone shifted, became almost transactional. I've already made the arrangements. Thornhill Memorial, 2 o'clock. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. Oh, and Martin, about Mom's estate. The will is very clear. Everything goes to me. The house in Camillus, the cottage on Skeneateles Lake, her investments, all of it. You get nothing. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Don't even think about contesting it, he added. She was very specific. I have the documents. It's ironclad. Then he hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the phone in disbelief. My mother, dead, just like that. And Victor's first priority wasn't grief. It was to inform me I was getting nothing. I'm sorry. Not. She went peacefully, a threat. A warning not to contest. Something was very, very wrong. Let me back up. My name is Martin Cole. I'm 64 years old. I spent 40 years as an architectural historian, specializing in heritage building preservation. I documented Victorian homes, analyzed structural integrity for conservation projects, spent entire afternoons in archives tracing property records and blueprints. It's slow work, detailed work, the kind of work that teaches you patience. My wife, Gloria, passed away 4 years ago from ovarian cancer. We had one son, Jeremiah, who's 31 now and teaches high school history in Seattle. After Gloria died, I threw myself into volunteering, historical societies, preservation boards, staying close to Mom. She'd been my rock through the grief. My brother Victor is 4 years younger, 58. We grew up close enough, playing street hockey in the driveway of our old house in Mattydale, building snow forts in winter, the usual stuff. But as adults, we drifted. Victor became a commercial insurance broker, married Naomi, had 2 kids. On the surface, everything looked fine. But I'd noticed things over the years. Victor was always chasing the next big client, always stretching himself thin financially. His business had some rough patches. There were whispered conversations at family dinners about investments that went south, about Naomi working double shifts as an ER nurse to keep them afloat. Our mother, Eleanor Cole, was 85 and had been sharp as a tack her entire life. A retired librarian, she could still quote Frost from memory and beat anyone at Scrabble. She lived independently in her home in Camillus until about 9 months ago, when Victor convinced her she needed extra help. He suggested he become her power of attorney, just to manage bills and medical appointments. Mom was hesitant, but Victor was persuasive. He was her baby boy after all. That's when everything changed. Within weeks of Victor getting the power of attorney, Mom was suddenly diagnosed with severe dementia. Victor moved her into a nursing home, Maple Ridge Care Center in Liverpool, saying she couldn't live alone anymore. When I visited, I was shocked. My vibrant, witty mother sat in a chair by the window, staring vacantly. She didn't recognize me. She barely spoke. When she did, it was confused, fragmented. Is this really possible? I'd asked her doctor, Dr. Larry Whitmore. She was fine 2 months ago. Dementia can progress very rapidly in some cases, he said smoothly. The cognitive decline in patients her age can be quite sudden. But it didn't sit right with me. I visited Mom 3 times a week anyway. Even when she didn't know who I was, I'd hold her hand. Tell her about Jeremiah, about the restoration project I was consulting on for the Onondaga Historical Association. Victor visited too, but less frequently. When he did, he always seemed rushed, always checking his watch. Now, standing in my kitchen with Victor's words still ringing in my ears, I realized what I'd been too blind to see. This wasn't grief talking, this was greed. I called Maple Ridge Care Center immediately. The phone rang 4 times before someone picked up. Maple Ridge, how can I help you? I'm calling about my mother. Eleanor Cole, I said, keeping my voice steady. I just heard she passed away last night. There was a pause. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole, but I don't have any record of that. Let me check her room. My heart started pounding. A few minutes later, the nurse came back on the line. Sir, your mother is fine. She's having breakfast right now. Is there some confusion? I sat down heavily. Can you do me a favor? I asked quietly. Don't tell anyone I called, especially not my brother. Of course. I hung up and stared at the snow falling outside my window. My mother wasn't dead. Victor had lied. And if he was willing to lie about that, what else had he done? I thought about the power of attorney, the sudden dementia diagnosis, the nursing home, the doctor who'd been so smooth, so certain. I thought about Victor's tone on the phone, businesslike, transactional. Everything goes to me. He wasn't just lying about Mom's death. He was planning something. And he thought I was too passive, too naive, too wrapped up in my dead wife's memory to notice. I picked up my phone again. This time I called my son. Jeremiah, I said when he answered, I need you to listen carefully. Don't interrupt. Your uncle just told me Grandma died, but she didn't. She's alive, and I think Victor is trying to steal her estate. There was silence on the other end. Then, Dad, that's elder abuse. That's fraud. What are you going to do? I looked out at the snow. It was falling harder now, blanketing everything. I don't know yet, I said, but I need to figure this out fast. He said the funeral is Friday. That's 3 days from now. I hung up and sat in the silence of my kitchen. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, something else was building. Not rage, not panic, clarity. Victor had made a mistake, a big one. He'd assumed I wouldn't check, that I'd just accept his word, that I'd show up to a fake funeral and watch him play the grieving son while he liquidated Mom's assets. But I'd spent 40 years documenting buildings that were supposed to be forgotten, tracing property records through decades of neglect, finding the truth buried under layers of bureaucracy and time. This was just another kind of excavation. I opened my laptop, started making a list. First, find out who Mom's real lawyer is. Second, get copies of the power of attorney documents. Third, find out what Victor has actually been doing with Mom's finances for the past 9 months. I didn't know how deep this went yet, but I was going to find out. And Victor, my little brother, the insurance broker who thought he was smarter than everyone else, was going to learn something I'd known for 40 years. The details always matter. And the truth always shows up eventually. You just have to know where to look. I spent the morning making calls. First, I contacted a lawyer I'd worked with before on a historic preservation dispute, Jason Chen. I explained the situation. Martin, this is serious, Jason said. If your brother has power of attorney and is misrepresenting your mother's condition or misappropriating her assets, we're talking about criminal charges. But you need evidence, solid evidence. Next, I hired a private investigator. Sarah Mitchell came to my house that afternoon, a sharp woman in her mid-40s with gray streaking her dark hair. How long has your brother had power of attorney? She asked, taking notes. 9 months, right after Mom supposedly developed dementia. And before that, your mother was competent. Completely. She was volunteering at the library, playing bridge twice a week. Then suddenly she couldn't remember her own name. Sarah nodded. I've seen cases like this. Give me 48 hours. I'll find out what's happening with your mother's finances. That evening, I drove to Maple Ridge. I didn't tell them I was coming. When I got to Mom's room, she was sitting in her usual chair by the window, staring out at the darkening sky. Her gray hair was thinner now, her face more lined than I remembered, but something about her seemed different tonight. Less drugged, more present. "Mom," I said softly, pulling up a chair beside her. She turned slowly. Those familiar brown eyes met mine. There was something in them. Recognition. Or was I imagining it? "It's me, Martin, your son." She blinked. Her mouth worked like she wanted to say something. But then a nurse came in to check her vitals, and the moment was gone. I drove home through the snow, my mind racing. What was Victor planning? A fake funeral to convince everyone Mom was dead. Then what? Transfer all her assets while everyone thought she was gone. It was insane. It was also, I was realizing, potentially brilliant in its audacity. Sarah called me the next morning. "Martin, you need to sit down." I sat at my kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear. "Your brother has been very busy. In the past 8 months, he's transferred approximately $240,000 from your mother's accounts into his own. He sold her cottage on Skaneateles Lake to a numbered LLC, which I'm still tracing, but I suspect he's behind it. He's also been drawing on her credit cards." I felt sick. "And Martin, the doctor who diagnosed your mother's dementia. Dr. James Whitmore. He went to Syracuse University with your brother. They were in the same fraternity. They've been friends for 30 years. The room tilted. So Mom's dementia could be medication-induced. If she's being overprescribed sedatives or antipsychotics, it would explain the sudden cognitive decline, the vacant behavior. That's attempted murder. That's what we need to prove. I'm getting copies of her medical records, but that takes time. In the meantime, I'd suggest you visit your mother again. Document everything. Record conversations with your brother if you can. New York is a one-party consent state." That afternoon, I was back at Maple Ridge. I'd brought my phone, ready to record anything suspicious. But when I got to Mom's room, it was empty. A nurse I didn't recognize was changing the sheets. "Where's my mother?" I asked, panic rising. "Oh, Mr. Cole, your brother took her out for a drive. He said she needed some air." My blood ran cold. "When?" "About an hour ago." I ran to the parking lot, but Victor's black Lexus was already gone. I tried calling him. No answer. I called 5 times. Nothing. Finally, 3 hours later, they returned. Victor helped Mom out of the car, supporting her as she shuffled back to her room. She looked exhausted, confused. Victor saw me waiting in the hallway. "Martin?" He didn't even bother to hide his annoyance. "What are you doing here? You said Mom died yesterday, yet here she is." He had the audacity to laugh. "Oh, that. Yeah, sorry about the confusion. I meant to call you back. False alarm. Mom had a bad episode yesterday, and I thought, well, you know, these things happen with dementia." "Where did you take her today?" "Just for a drive. She likes getting out." "Really? Because she looks like she can barely stand." His voice dropped, became harder. "Back off, Martin. I'm her power of attorney. I make the decisions about her care, not you. You want to challenge that? Get a lawyer." He brushed past me, helping Mom into her room. Through the doorway, I watched him settle her into her chair, speaking to her in a low voice I couldn't hear. Then he left, not even looking at me as he walked away. I was about to leave when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello?" Silence, then a whisper. A woman's voice, faint and scratchy. "Martin, Yes? Who is this? Martin, it's me. The voice was so quiet I had to press the phone hard against my ear. Who? It's your mother. I froze. That couldn't be. Mom was right there in her room, and this call was coming from... I checked the screen. A blocked number. Martin, listen carefully. I don't have much time. I need you to come to my room tonight. Late, after 10. Make sure Victor isn't here. The line went dead. I stood in the parking lot, snow falling around me, staring at my phone like it had transformed into something alien. That was impossible. Mom couldn't have called me. She could barely string 2 words together. And yet that voice, even whispered and strained, had sounded like her. The real her. The sharp, clear-minded woman I'd known my entire life. I waited in my car until after 10 p.m., watching the nursing home. Victor's Lexus was long gone. The night shift was on. Just a skeleton crew. I used my key code to enter through the side door and made my way to Mom's room. She was sitting up in bed, the lights low. When I entered, she turned to look at me, and in the dim light, I saw her eyes. Clear, focused, completely lucid. Close the door, she said in a normal voice. Not the confused mumble I'd heard for months. A normal, strong voice. I shut the door, my hands shaking. Mom, what? Sit down, sweetheart. We need to talk, and we don't have much time. I sat, completely stunned. Are you okay? What's happening? My mother, who I'd thought was lost in the fog of dementia, smiled at me. Actually smiled with that wry expression I remembered from childhood. I'm fine, Martin. I've been fine this whole time. But the dementia, the diagnosis, you couldn't even recognize me. Because I was pretending. The room seemed to tilt. Pretending. She reached over and took my hand. Her grip was firm, steady. Nothing like the weak, trembling hands I'd held for months. Martin, I'm 85 years old. I've been thinking a lot about mortality, about what happens when I'm gone, and I realized I needed to know something. She paused. I needed to know which of my sons would actually take care of me. Not for my money, not for inheritance, but because they loved me. So you faked dementia to test us? When Victor suggested becoming my power of attorney, I saw an opportunity. I agreed, but I also consulted my own lawyer, someone Victor doesn't know about. I put most of my assets in an irrevocable trust weeks before Victor got the power of attorney. The accounts he has access to? I only left enough in them to see what he'd do. I couldn't process this. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Her eyes grew sad. Because I had to test both of you. I had to see who would visit me when I couldn't give them anything back. Who would hold my hand even when I didn't know their name. Tears were running down my face. And Martin, you came 3 times a week. You sat with me. You talked to me. Even when I acted like I had no idea who you were. Of course I came. You're my mother. I know that now, but Victor... She shook her head. Victor failed, Martin. Worse than I ever imagined. I've been documenting everything. Every time he came to pressure me to sign papers. Every time he got angry when I played confused. I have it all recorded. The $240,000 he took, from the accounts I left accessible, I've been letting him dig his own grave. Mom, he told me you were dead. He's planning a funeral for Friday. She nodded. I know. He told me today, during our drive. He said I was going to have an accident, that I'd pass away peacefully. He wanted me to sign papers first, transferring everything. But I refused, played confused. This is insane. This is dangerous. We need to call the police right now. No, not yet. She squeezed my hand. Jason Chen, your lawyer. He's been my lawyer too. For the past month. We have a plan. But I need you to trust me, Martin. Can you do that? I squeezed her hand back. Always. Over the next 2 days, we set everything up. Jason Chen brought in the police, but quietly. They agreed to let Mom's plan play out, to catch Victor in the act with irrefutable evidence. We installed hidden cameras in Mom's room, tiny things, the size of a button. My architectural background came in handy. I knew how to conceal recording devices in crown molding, behind picture frames, inside the tissue box on her nightstand. We coordinated with the nursing home staff. Those we could trust. And Mom continued her act, playing the confused, declining patient whenever Victor was around. Victor came twice more. Once to bring papers for Mom to sign, transfer documents for her house. Mom scribbled something illegible, acted like she didn't understand. Victor's frustration was visible, barely contained. "Just sign clearly, Mom," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm trying to help you." The second time, Thursday night, he brought medication. I watched the video footage later, and it made me physically ill. He told Mom it was her regular prescription, but we had it tested afterward. It was a massive dose of sedatives, enough to kill someone her age. Mom pretended to take it, palmed the pills. "Tomorrow," Victor said, smoothing her hair. "Tomorrow you'll finally be at peace, Mom. No more suffering." Friday morning came. Victor had booked Greenwood Funeral Home in Fayetteville. He'd sent out notices, called relatives. Cousins I hadn't seen in years called me offering condolences. I played along. "Yes, the funeral's at 2. Yes, it was very sudden." The funeral home was packed. Victor had gone all out. Flowers everywhere. White lilies, roses, enormous arrangements on stands flanking the front of the room. A large photo of Mom from 20 years ago sat on an easel beside the empty casket. She was smiling in the photo, standing in front of the cottage at Skaneateles Lake. He'd even written an obituary. I'd seen it in the Post-Standard that morning. Eleanor Margaret Cole, 85, passed away peacefully on January 7th after a long illness. Beloved mother, devoted librarian, cherished friend, survived by sons Victor and Martin. Service at Greenwood Funeral Home, Friday, 2 p.m. I sat in the front row with Jeremiah, who'd flown in that morning from Seattle. Victor sat across the aisle with Naomi and their 2 kids, Ryan, 17, and Sophia, 14. His face was composed, appropriately sorrowful. Naomi kept touching his arm, comforting him. His children looked genuinely sad. They'd loved their grandmother. The room filled with people, aunts, uncles, old colleagues from the library where Mom had worked, friends from her bridge club, neighbors from Camillus. Everyone dressed in black, everyone whispering condolences. At exactly 2 p.m., Victor stood up. He walked to the podium at the front of the room, adjusted the microphone, and began to speak. "We're here today to celebrate the life of Eleanor Margaret Cole, born February 14, 1940, passed away January 7, 2025. His voice was strong, clear, just the right amount of emotion. Mom was an incredible woman, a librarian who shaped young minds for 35 years, a mother who always put her children first, a grandmother who never missed a school play or a baseball game." He paused. Let the moment breathe. And in her final months, when her mind began to fail, she trusted me to care for her. She knew I would protect her interests, manage her affairs, ensure she was comfortable. Several people in the crowd nodded. Naomi was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Mom always had a special bond with me," Victor continued. "As the youngest, I think she felt protective of me. She told me so many times over the years, 'Victor, you understand me. You know what I need.'" I felt my jaw tighten. Jeremiah put a hand on my knee. "Wait," his expression said. "When she asked me to become her power of attorney last year, it was because she trusted me. She knew I was the responsible one, the one who would take care of everything." He looked out at the crowd. Mom was very clear about her wishes, very specific. She wanted me to have her house in Camillus, the house where we grew up, where she raised us. She wanted me to have the cottage at Skeneedles Lake, the place where we spent every summer as kids. His voice caught, perfectly timed. She wanted me to manage her investments, to use them wisely, to take care of the family the way she always did. He pulled out a handkerchief, dabbed at his eyes. Mom told me she was at peace with her decision. She said, "Victor, I know you'll do the right thing. I know you'll honor my memory." Someone in the back row was crying audibly now. "And I promise you, Mom." Victor looked up at the ceiling, as if addressing her directly. "I promise I will honor you. I will take care of everything. I will make sure your legacy lives on through the choices I make with what you've left behind." He paused. She also wanted to make sure her other son was taken care of. "Martin." He looked directly at me. "Mom knew you had your own life, your own career. She didn't want you to be burdened with managing properties or investments. She wanted you to be free to focus on your work, your son, your life." The implication was clear. She didn't trust you with anything important. So she left everything to me, knowing I would carry that responsibility with honor. He stepped back from the microphone. "Mom, we love you. We'll miss you. And I promise, I will make you proud." The room erupted in soft applause. People were standing, wiping tears. Victor returned to his seat. Linda hugged him. I stood up. Every head in the room turned. "That's interesting, Victor," I said loudly. My voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "Want to tell everyone where Mom really is right now?" Confusion rippled through the room like a wave. Victor's face went white. "Martin, sit down. This isn't the time." "Where's the body, Victor?" People were looking at each other now, whispering. "Where's Mom's body?" She's being cremated. We discussed this." "Really? Because I called the crematorium. They don't have her." Naomi grabbed Victor's arm. "Victor, what is he talking about?" Victor stood up. His face was red now. "Martin, you need to stop this. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly." "Where is the body?" "Martin." The doors at the back of the funeral home opened. Every person in the room turned. And there, framed in the doorway, was my mother. She walked in slowly, using a walker, but her back was straight. Her eyes were sharp, clear, and fixed on Victor. Behind her, 2 uniformed police officers followed. The room erupted. People stood up, gasping. Someone screamed. Sophia burst into tears. Ryan grabbed his father's arm. Mom made her way down the aisle. The crowd parted for her like she was Moses at the Red Sea. When she reached Victor, she stopped. "Hello, son," she said clearly. Her voice carried through the entire room. "I'm not dead, but your inheritance is." Victor's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "Mom, you're confused. You're sick. This is a mistake." "I'm not confused, Victor. I've been recording everything for the past 8 months. Every threat, every theft, every time you tried to get me to sign documents transferring my assets to you. Every time you drugged me to keep me compliant." She turned to the assembled crowd. Many of them were crying now, some in relief, others in shock. "I'm sorry for deceiving all of you," Mom said, "but I had to know the truth. I had to see what my son would do when he thought I was helpless." She looked back at Victor, and what I found broke my heart. One of the police officers stepped forward. "Victor Cole, you're under arrest for elder abuse, theft over $5,000, fraud, and attempted probate fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Victor tried to run. He actually tried to push past the officer and run for the door. He made it 3 steps before he was tackled, handcuffed. His kids were sobbing. Naomi stood frozen, her face a mask of horror. As they led Victor away, he shouted back at Mom. "I'm your son. You can't do this to me. I needed that money." Mom watched him go, tears streaming down her face, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "You were my son, But you stopped being my child the moment you decided my life was worth less than my bank account. The room was silent except for the sound of Victor's voice echoing down the hallway, getting fainter. "This is a mistake! Mom, please, please!" Then the door closed, and he was gone. The legal proceedings took months. Victor initially tried to fight the charges, claimed Mom was actually incompetent and he was just trying to help, that I had manipulated her, that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. Video footage of him trying to force her to sign documents. Audio recordings of his threats. Bank records showing the theft. $240,000 transferred from her accounts to his over 8 months. Dr. Whitmore's testimony after he was granted immunity about how Victor had pressured him to prescribe unnecessary medications. How he'd falsified records to support a dementia diagnosis that never existed. Text messages between Victor and the LLC he'd created to purchase Mom's cottage. Messages where he discussed how to liquidate the asset before anyone noticed, and the sedatives. The massive dose he'd brought to her room on Thursday night, caught on camera. The lab analysis showing it was enough to kill someone her age. In the end, Victor pleaded guilty. He got 6 years in prison. Federal charges for wire fraud, elder abuse, and attempted voluntary manslaughter. The judge called it a betrayal of the most fundamental kind, a son preying on the mother who raised him. He was ordered to repay the $240,000 he'd stolen, plus $75,000 in fines and restitution. His commercial insurance broker's license was revoked permanently by the state. The Office of Professional Conduct added him to a registry of individuals banned from holding power of attorney in New York. Naomi divorced him within 3 months, got full custody of Ryan and Sophia. The kids were devastated, but Jeremiah and I tried to stay in their lives, tried to be the stable family they needed. We invited them to holidays. Jeremiah took Ryan to a Mets game. I helped Sophia with her college applications. They didn't need to carry their father's sins. Dr. Whitmore lost his medical license. The New York State Board for Professional Medical Conduct found he'd knowingly prescribed dangerous medications to an elderly patient at the behest of her power of attorney without proper evaluation or monitoring. He'd violated his oath. The board was not lenient. As for Mom, she moved into a small condo in Fayetteville, near my house. She was done with the big house in Camillus, done with maintaining property. She wanted to be close to family, to Jeremiah when he visited, to me. We had dinner together twice a week. She volunteered again, this time at an elder abuse prevention center in Syracuse, sharing her story to help others recognize the warning signs. We established the Eleanor Cole Elder Protection Fund, with part of the money Victor had returned. It provides legal assistance to seniors fighting financial abuse cases. Funds educational programs about power of attorney responsibilities. Offers free consultations with elder law attorneys. Last year alone, the fund helped 17 families in Onondaga County. One evening, about a year after everything happened, Mom and I sat on my back porch watching another Syracuse snowfall. She held a mug of tea, wrapped in a thick blanket. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "The way you tested us?" She was quiet for a long time. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my own son could do what he did." She looked at me. "But Martin, I don't regret finding out the truth. I had to know who would love me when I had nothing to give. You gave me everything that mattered," I said. "You taught me integrity. You taught me that doing the right thing matters, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She smiled, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "And that's why you passed the test. Not because you visited me, though that mattered, but because even when you thought I was gone, even when you thought you were getting nothing, you fought for what was right. You didn't let Victor get away with it. You protected me," I said, "even when I thought I couldn't protect myself. That's what family does, real family." "Yes," she said softly. But blood doesn't make you family, Martin. Love does. Choice does. Showing up does. She looked out at the snow piling up on the fence, on the bare trees. Victor was my blood, but he stopped being family the moment he decided I was just an asset to liquidate. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall. Inside, I could hear my phone buzzing. Jeremiah, probably, calling from Seattle for our weekly check-in. Jason Chen, maybe, with updates on the charitable fund, life moving forward. Mom looked at me, her eyes still sharp and clear. You know what the saddest part is? What? If Victor had just asked, if he'd just been honest about his financial problems, I would have helped him. Not with everything, not enabling poor choices. But I would have helped. She shook her head. Instead, he chose to steal. He chose to treat me like I was already dead, and that choice cost him everything. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just held her hand. This remarkable woman who'd taught me more about strength and dignity in the past year than in all the years before. She'd survived betrayal by her own son, orchestrated her own rescue, and came out the other side determined to help others. The numbers tell part of the story. $240,000 returned in full, with interest, $75,000 in additional fines paid to the state. The cottage at Skaneateles Lake, sold by the LLC Victor had created, was reclaimed through legal action. Mom sold it properly and donated the proceeds, for $20,000 to the Alzheimer's Association. The Eleanor Cole Elder Protection Fund now holds $580,000 in assets. It's helped 38 families across New York State in the past year. Recovered over $1.2 million in stolen funds. Prosecuted 9 cases of elder financial abuse. Victor will be released in 2030. He'll be 64, the same age I am now. He'll have no career, no savings, no relationship with his children, who've made it clear they want nothing to do with him. He'll have nothing. And that, more than any prison sentence, is the real consequence. But numbers don't tell the whole story. That's the thing about family, the real kind. It's not about blood. It's not about inheritance. It's about showing up. It's about loving someone even when they can't give you anything back. It's about fighting for what's right, even when it means standing against your own brother. Victor made his choices. He chose greed over love, theft over integrity, a fake funeral over honesty, and he's paying the price. Not just in prison time, but in the loss of his children's respect, his wife, his career, his mother's love. As for me, I got something far more valuable than any inheritance. I got more years with my mother, real years, where we could talk and laugh and heal. I got the knowledge that when tested, I did the right thing. And I got the chance to be part of something bigger, helping other families avoid what we went through. Last month, Mom and I were interviewed by the Syracuse Post-Standard. They wanted to write a feature about the case, about elder abuse awareness. The reporter asked Mom why she'd done it, why she'd faked dementia for 8 months. Because I needed to know, Mom said simply. I needed to know who would help me when I couldn't help myself. And what did you learn? The reporter asked. Mom looked at me. I learned that dignity matters more than dollars, that real love shows up even when there's nothing to gain, and that sometimes the bravest thing an 85-year-old woman can do is pretend to be helpless, just to find out who will help her when she can't help herself. The article ran last Sunday. It's been shared over 50,000 times on social media. We've received donations to the fund from across the country. Letters from families who've experienced similar abuse. And yesterday, Mom received a letter from the New York State Attorney General's office. They're launching a statewide task force on elder financial abuse. They've asked her to serve as an advisor. She said yes. That's what I learned from Eleanor Cole, my mother, my hero. The woman who taught me that blood doesn't excuse betrayal, that true family protects the vulnerable, and that sometimes the quietest act of courage is simply refusing to let evil win, even when that evil wears the face of someone you love. Victor thought he was smarter than everyone else. He thought I was too passive, too naive, too buried in old buildings and dead history. To notice what he was doing, he was wrong, and now he's the one buried, under 6 years of prison time, a criminal record, and the knowledge that he destroyed his own family for $240,000 he never even got to keep. I look out at the snow falling on my modest house in Syracuse. Inside, Mom is probably making tea. Jeremiah will call soon. Maybe Ryan and Sophia will stop by this weekend. This is my inheritance. Not money, not property, family. The real kind. The kind that shows up. So, what do you think? Here's the question that's been keeping me up at night. Was Eleanor right to test her sons like that? I mean, think about it. She faked dementia for 8 months. Let Martin visit her 3 times a week while she pretended not to know him. Watched Victor steal from her accounts while she documented everything. Some people say she's a genius, a hero who exposed a predator. Others say she manipulated both her sons. That no mother should test their children like that. I honestly don't know where I stand. On one hand, Victor was literally planning to kill her. He brought sedatives strong enough to stop her heart. He told relatives she was dead and planned a funeral. That's not a mistake. That's evil. But on the other hand, what if Martin hadn't passed the test? What if he'd been too busy, too distant, too wrapped up in his own grief to visit? Would Eleanor have written him off too? Here's what I want to know from you. 1. Do you think Eleanor was justified in faking her dementia? 2. Would you have done the same thing in her position? 3. At what point does testing family cross the line into manipulation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where people fall on this. And here's a darker question. How many Victors are out there right now? How many people with power of attorney are quietly draining their parents' accounts, convinced they deserve it, or that Mom won't need it much longer anyway? The Eleanor Cole Elder Protection Fund is real, by the way. Well, the story is fictionalized, but funds like it exist all over the country. If you suspect someone you know is being financially abused, please report it. The National Center on Elder Abuse has resources. So does your state's Adult Protective Services. Silence protects abusers, always. If this story got under your skin, in a good way or a bad way, hit that like button. If you think someone needs to hear this, maybe someone dealing with aging parents or complicated family dynamics, share it. And if you want more stories like this, morally complicated, disturbingly plausible, the kind that make you question what you'd do in that situation, subscribe. I post new stories every week, sometimes revenge, sometimes redemption. Always real enough to make you uncomfortable. Drop a comment. Let's argue about this. Was Eleanor a hero or a manipulator? Was Martin too passive for too long? And what would you have done if your brother told you Mom was dead? But she wasn't? I'll see you in the comments. And I'll see you next week with another story that'll keep you up at night.